Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's presentation. My name is Dottie Vance, and I am a customer readiness trainer here at the ASO, and I'll be walking us through today's training. Also presenting with me a little bit later on and to help with some questions and some clarity is the Manager of Market Settlement Disputes, Uma Ramathan. She has depth knowledge on this topic, and we're so excited that she's here today for today's training. We should get through the materials relatively quickly. We'll get through some examples, but we do want to make sure we have time for Q&A, or if folks have any specific questions, we'll be able to address those. So today we're here to talk about the changes being implemented as part of the unwarranted storage bid cost recovery, that USBCR training. For awareness and to increase transparency and to provide a greater service to our stakeholders, we are recording this webinar. It will be posted to our website sometime after today's training, so folks can review it in the future, or for those who are unable to attend today's call. Also, I just put a link again in today's training. I know as folks kind of trickle in, they may miss the link, so I'll post it a couple times throughout. But this is posted on our training center, and these are the training slides that I'll be going over today. If for some reason there's something that needs to be updated in the slides or something needs to be added for clarity, I'll re-upload these slides with the edits, and I'll be sure to send out a notification so folks are aware that it's been updated. Now, before we get into today's training, I do just want to go over some housekeeping, some things to be mindful of as we go through today's training. And the first being just to remain on mute. As you entered today's training, I believe you were automatically put on mute, and that's just to help with background noise. Now, when we get to questions, and we'll have stopping points, you have two options. You can either put your question in the chat. We'll be able to respond via chat, read it out loud for others to see, or you can use the raised hand icon. And so that's a feature in WebEx that you can click. It's going to indicate to me that you would like to verbally ask a question. Again, when we get to a stopping point, I'll call out your name. If you could just say your name again, the organization you're with, and then your question, just so we can capture it for any potential FAQs after today's training. Additionally, just as a reminder, these training materials will be provided to you, so the slides are already posted. The recording will be posted as soon as possible, if not around 3 days after today's training. Again, if we get it sooner, I'll get this posted right away for folks to have. We'll also send out communication pointing to where this is located again for anyone who may have missed it, and additional details as well. So now that we got the housekeeping kind of taken care of, we're squared away to kind of start this training, let's go over the learning objectives today. So what our goal is, you leaving this training, what do we want to achieve? And so you'll see we have a couple, and they're going to hit on a couple of things that we go through. And so it's really to understand how we're going to apply these rules and formulas to really validate the energy bid prices. Again, we'll go through the project overview. You're going to see a high-level impact to the settlements. I'll have some walkthrough of the calculation that you'll see and what that looks like with examples. We're also going to identify which trade dates the rule will be applied to. I know we have some slides later on that's going to be addressing that. We're going to review which statements will reflect the corrections made by this bid price and how they'll be documented. Again, we have information a little bit later on in detail, so you could be aware when this project goes live. And then we're going to look at those changes as they're impacted in the overall settlement process. So that goes into, as I'm going through examples of dispatching up versus dispatching down, you can kind of see what exactly that is doing. Additionally, I wanted to provide a project timeline, just very high level. The first just kind of showing that BRS. So I have linked here in the slides how we have that posted. That's located on the release planning page if you wanted to go through. The content that I'm covering today, I pulled from that BRS, so you'll be able to see it just in a slightly different way. Additionally, we're here for the training today, an opportunity if you have any questions or if you want to submit anything, this is a great time to kind of bring that up. In our communication last week that we sent out to folks, we did include the settlement example, some additional resources for you to look at. And if we have time today, or if you have questions about that Excel file that we had posted, we can have some time at the end to talk about it. And then the last thing, and again, I have more details here later on in the slides, is our activation and production. So this project will be implemented in the production environment this afternoon, and we'll have details about what trade dates and what's impacted for that, so you're aware. Additionally, the ISO will have additional communication going out this afternoon with resources and more details about what we covered in today's training. So now that we've gone over the project timeline, we kind of know where we're going. Let's look at that project overview. Now, this slide here is really just to encompass an overview for you. We wanted it to be user-friendly, so it kind of has that objective, so why we're here today. It's going to be updating that calculation of real-time bid cost recovery for limited energy storage resources. And then that ties into who's impacted by this, who should be attending this training or reviewing this training later on. And that's going to be that LSERs, that resource type, and the users are the CAISO, WEIM, and EDAM BAAs. Also impacted by this is the two charge codes I have listed here, which is 6620, the real-time market RTM bid cost recovery settlement, as well as the 66200, that real-time bid cost recovery EIM settlement. At the end of this presentation, I do have a bunch of great reference links, and so I do have some things pointing to the settlements page just for resources for you to have and to peruse at your own time. Additionally, some things I wanted to go over for the project overview is the optimal quantity bill determinants. So I do want to point out a note here that there's no changes to the quantity, as well as we have listed the price bill determinants for your reference. And again, just going back to that activation and in the communication we sent out previously on this last week, when this goes into production, the settlements will be applied to the revised real-time bid price rules from that effective date of 12/1/2024. And then with that, I did want to point out, if you're someone who wants to kind of see where does this tie into the tariff, how is this impacting our business practice manuals, I do have this linked here for you. So these are the tariff sections that I have linked, as well as you'll see the market operations BPM will be updated, and it's going to reflect the rules for applying the prices to optimal energy for the LESRs in Appendix C. Now, this will go through that PRR process. I do have the PRR process linked. Once we get more details and once this does go through, we'll be communicating this out to users for your awareness and for your involvement. Additionally, you'll see here on the screen, it is located on the ISO's website. So it's going to be under the legal and regulatory section, and you'll see tariff and business practice manuals. That's where I'm pulling this information. Now, before we get into the change itself, I did just want to take a stopping point just to see if anyone had any initial questions. Again, we'll have more details about that activation here in a little bit in the later slides, but I did just want to take a beat, and I'll see if there's any hands raised or any questions in the chat. Okay, I do not see any currently. And so as we're going through, as you think of other questions, or hopefully we answer some of those for you, we'll take some stopping points and kind of go through it as well. Okay, so the thing we're here to talk about today is really that modification to the real-time BCR calculation for storage resources. So we're going to be addressing this differently, and there's that modification that I want to make sure that everyone is aware of and what that looks like, and we'll go through some examples here in just a moment. The examples that I'll be going through with you is dispatch down and dispatch up. So for dispatch down, you're going to see that the equation is going to select the lowest of the three listed prices. So those three prices include the real-time default energy bid, the real-time locational market price, and the day-ahead locational market price. And then it's going to compare those, the lowest, to the original final bid price and use whichever is higher. Now, you'll see there's an asterisk next to the day-ahead locational market price, and this just means that it's only applied if a storage resource had a non-zero day-ahead schedule. And so the examples I'll go through for each of these is one with it applying and one without it applying, just so you can kind of see what that looks like. Now, if we look at dispatch up, you're going to see it's kind of flipped. So instead of doing the lowest of the three prices, dispatch up is going to do the highest of the three prices. And then it'll compare it to the original final bid price and use which is ever lower. Again, you'll see that asterisk on the day ahead locational market price. That's going to be the same thing. It's going to only apply if a storage resource had a non-zero day ahead schedule. And I'll have two examples of when it applies and when it doesn't. So if we start first, let's look at dispatch up, because that was the last thing I kind of talked about. And I just took the words that I just said and that was on that screen and put it into the equation form. So again, just giving it to you in a different variety so you can kind of see what it looks like as well written out mathematically. So this shows if the day ahead schedule exists versus if it's not impacted. So this equation will show for the revised bid price, it's going to equal to what we said, the highest of the three listed prices, and then compare it to the original final bid price and use whichever is lower. So just to kind of put it to paper, so now we've verbally said it, we see the equation. Now let's see what that actually looks like with some numbers. So if we look first, this first example is going to be a dispatch up where that day ahead does apply. You'll see that the screenshot I have here is pulled from the BRS. So I believe it's in the appendix. There's a bunch of examples in there. I did want to pull from there just so you can kind of see how to read that appendix. And so I also have it color coded to kind of help as we go through it, because again, a lot of numbers. But that first value we're going to look at is that bid price, the original. So the $369.09. The next price we'll look at is that RT Deb, so it's $100.73. The next price in this equation is that RTD LMP, which is $21.29. And then because this is a non-zero day ahead schedule, this will apply, so it's the $39.30. So if we take those values and we plug it into the equation, you're going to see it kind of laid out like this. And that first thing we're going to do is look at which is the highest of the three. So of the three, it's going to be that 101.73. And then from there, you're going to take the lowest, compare it back to that original bid price that we talked about, the $369. And you're going to see now that that revised bid price is $100.73 that you see up in that table above. So that's kind of how you're plugging in the numbers. You're seeing how we got to that revised bid price. Let's look at an example now when the day ahead is not. So we're not going to include that day ahead LMP. So the key values here when we're doing this is going to be the original bid price, that $369.09. We have the RT Deb, so $101.73. And then we have the RTD LMP, which is the 2015 price. So again, if we were to plug it in, the first thing we'd want to do is take the highest of the two numbers of the 101 and the 2015, and that would be the 101. And then now we're going to compare it to that original bid price, and we're going to take whichever is the lowest. So again, that bid price revised is going to be $101.73. So those are two examples walking through that dispatch up equation, applying it when it has a day ahead, when we kind of include that number value versus when we don't. I now want to go through the dispatch down, and then I'm going to pause and see what questions we might have about this. So similarly, we're taking the verbiage that we first talked about when we talked about dispatch down, and we're putting it now into an equation. So again, this equation is saying that we're going to select the lowest of the three listed prices and compare it to the original final bid price and use whichever is higher of the two. And again, similarly, what we just saw, either the day ahead is impacted and we'll have the day ahead LMP, or it's not impacted and you'll see that's not included in that equation. So if we start first with it impacting, so we are going to have it, you'll see similarly some key values here. So the first one being the original bid price will be $384.49. We'll have that RT Deb of $101.73, that RTD LMP of $24.13, and then the day ahead LMP of $39.30. So just like we did with the other example that we went through, we're going to plug it now in to its location. And the first thing we're going to do is find the lowest of these three numbers. So that would be the $24.13. and then we compare it to that original bid price and take the highest of the two, which is going to be a revised bid price of $384.49. So if we continue on to one more example here, so this is when the day ahead is null, it's 0. You'll see the key values. The original bid price is the $369.09. You'll see we're going to be pulling in that RT-DEB of 101.73, and then that RTD LNP of 26.04. And so if we take those values and plug it into the equation, we're going to first take the lowest number between the 101 and 26, and it's going to be the 26.04. And then we're going to compare it back to that original bid and take whichever is higher, which is that $369.09. So that's how you apply those equations, taking from examples from the BRS. I did want to pause here and see if folks have any questions. I know we have some exceptions and a few other details that we'll talk about here after this slide, but I did just want to pause and see if folks had any questions about the equations and the steps I just went through. Okay, I'm currently not seeing any, but if you think as you're going through, please feel free to raise your hand or put a question in the chat. So these next slides, I have two. I'm going to pass it over to Uma. She's going to kind of walk us through these. And so we're going to see some exceptions as well as how it applies in production. So I'll pass it to you, Uma.
Okay, thank you, Dottie. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk about how the revised bid prices are going to be applied when you have multi-segment bid price allocations. As everyone knows about this, whenever the resource submits a bid, there are multiple bid segment prices. So based on the dispatch, we calculate it. So the revised prices is going to be applied only to the real-time final bid prices, except in this unique scenario. When two records for different bid segments get changed to the same price, we are going to sum the megawatts together to indicate the total optimal energy for that settlement interval. So currently, you guys can see that for trade hour 15, settlement interval 3, the energy type will be optimal energy with different megawatts with the different bid price. So 32 megawatts will be applied for 1.03 megawatt hour, and $35 will be applied for 0.78 megawatt hour. So when we apply the revised bid prices, you will be seeing only one record instead of two records in the expected energy allocation details in CMRI. You will be able to see only one record, and the megawatts will be summed together, and the prices will be that mitigated price, the revised bid price of $28 in this example. Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you, Dottie. Can you go ahead and go to the next slide? Okay, so we will, as Dottie has mentioned, we are going to implement the fix in production starting from today, and corrections regarding this change will follow the below schedules. So today is not T+9B, you will be able to see the corrections starting from 9/10. And T+70, we will be applying this from 6/24 through 9/9. T+11 month, effective trade of this initiative is 12/1/2024. You will be able to see from 12/1/2024 through 6/23/2025. And we have tested trade date 5/6/2025 in stage, and we have validated the results from bid to bill. These statements will not be published, but if you have any questions, or if you would like to review any of your resource, please go ahead and submit a city inquiry ticket, and we will provide you a response to that ticket. Or if any of you want to meet with us, please let us know, and we can have a separate meeting specific to your resource for this trading 5/6/2025. Any questions so far? Okay, thank you, Dottie. I'll give it back to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Uma. And so just the next slide that we wanted to highlight for folks is just where in CMRI. There's no UI changes in this report. It's just kind of pointing out where this existing report is and where you'll see that bid price. So if you log into the customer market results interface, you go to post-market section and you'll click the expected energy allocation details. You'll be taken to this report where you can kind of review that bid price. So we did have a pause for questions, but before we do that, I'll pause again here at the end. I'll just talk about next steps, and then we'll open it up if folks have a larger discussion. Again, we wanted to just build in some extra time just in case folks did have or did submit any extra examples, but I'll talk about next steps first. So for next steps, for activation and production environment this afternoon, again, this is going in. We'll be sending out a communication to folks with details about what we covered in these slides, as well as additional resources that they can use. If you have any specific questions, what Uma just talked about, if you wanted to meet with us or your team had specific questions about testing, we ask that you please submit a city inquiry ticket and we'll be able to set up that extra call or answer your questions via city. And then like we talked about earlier, these materials will be posted on the training center. That presentation is currently already posted. I'll post it here again, the link in the chat, but the recording will be either 3 business days, if not sooner. So I do see, Alva, you do have your hand raised, so we can stop here and take your question.
It's a quick one. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Audible? Great. Just a request for some aggregate reporting on the difference that this has made in the days that are being recalculated as part of the market participant forum, perhaps. Just like to know whether there's been any material change in the amount of bid cost recovery and on an ongoing basis as well. I think Kun did a really good job with the previous change and is continuing to do a good job with the change that was involving the flexible ramping, and it would be good to have a similar kind of level of just reporting out. It really helps us to understand how meaningful these changes are. So thank you.
Of course, thank you, Alva. I'll make sure to take that back with our team. Okay, so then the next slides I just have is more of a wrap up, and then we can stay on to see if folks have any other questions. But just to improve, again, we're constantly wanting to improve user experience and make these trainings really meaningful. I'll put a link in the chat, as well as I'll send out an email after today's training with this content. But if you have 3 to 5 minutes and you could fill out this survey, let us know how we did. We can use that feedback and apply it to our next session. So that's all the main material I have today to cover. Again, in the reference links, there's some additional links that you can kind of click through at your own time, but I'll pause here for a little bit just to see if there's any other final questions before we close out early. Okay, perfect. So I'm always happy to give time back. Again, we wanted to create this buffer just in case there was a larger discussion, but I'll send this out to you all. I hope you all have a great day, and thank you for spending your morning with us.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.